Part of the vision for the project when we first started working with Laity was to sort of fix some practical concerns, but also to kind of breathe new life into an existing place that has been in kind of the cultural memory of Texans for generations. My name is John Byrd. I'm with Overland Partners. I'm an architect, and we were the designers of the Laity Lodge renovation. So biophilia is really about using the built world to connect people with nature, which is exactly what we're trying to do here at Laity Lodge. The challenge with Cedar Brake was the historic buildings are right on the river. And so how do we create a place that's not on the river, but is sort of equal to that in quality? And so what we really did was embrace the fact that this is in the cedar forest. The buildings are tucked between the trees and really react to the geology and vegetation of the site itself. The scale and proportion of the buildings is very much in proportion with the vegetation, the trees that we find on site. Even the spaces between the buildings are scaled and were studied to mimic the spaces of the natural clearings between the trees and the cedar forest. The buildings themselves were made of natural materials and materials that feel very much of the place. Small details are also really important to the project. This biophilia and connection with nature, it happens overtly, but it also happens subtly. People are out here for days at a time, weeks at a time in some cases. So it was important that we designed in these opportunities, these little moments that you don't notice right away, these sort of connect after you fully kind of unplugged the routine of your everyday life and are really on site here.
I'm more inspired by nature probably than anything. My name is Christy TenEyck, and I was the A landscape architect on the project. Everywhere you look, you're connected with nature. You can't escape it. I think the architecture speaks to the landscape in that it doesn't hide people from it. It opens you up into it. The entire camp is in the riparian buffer zone of the Frio. So anything that happens up here is going down into the river. And so to me, it was a great way to create this green sponge to soak up this drainage coming off the hill and off the bluff and filter and clean that water before it goes into the river. We're using the native stone that we collected and the native plants, but it helps filter the water, slows it down, lets it seep down to the meadow and then to the river. Life is sacred, water is sacred, water is the life source, And so I just think it should be handled in a beautiful way instead of put in pipes and cast iron grates.
One of the goals that we had for the design of these buildings was a kind of unadorned simplicity. We wanted these rooms to be almost spare, but on the other hand, we wanted them to have an elegance that was subtle but very, very present. My name is Stephen Purcell, and I'm the executive director here at Laity Lodge. There's a really wonderful poem by the late poet Denise Levertov called A Clearing, and it describes driving down an old country road surrounded by a canopy of cedars. And she goes on to describe how life-giving this place is. I love that idea that a place that is really kind of surprising, it doesn't seem like you should find it there, nevertheless has this power of not just receiving you and welcoming you and giving you some kind of hospitable experience there, but it gives you some perspective for how you can live when you leave that place, when you go back to your home or back to your work. We're deeply inspired by that idea that this is a place that we come to that in a way recalibrates and reorients us in our relationship to ourselves, to one another, but also to the natural environment. Then it sends us back to wherever we've come from with a new sense of perspective